To find out more, follow us on our social media platforms: YouTube UTV124, Facebook UTV124, Instagram UTV124, Twitch UTV124, TikTok UTV_124, and Flow TV channel 124. Remember, UTV, TV for you.
I can't stay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. As always, it's a great pleasure being here with you. It's the middle of the week, getting closer to Friday, which doesn't mean anything anymore because my weekends don't even making any sense because it's probably going to be a scandal by the time we get there. So let me say good morning to those of you watching us on television on channel 124 on Flow. That is UTV Underground Television, where we, always have great programming here for you. Also, if you are listening to us, maybe you're driving, maybe you're at home and you're listening to us on our radio partner station, that is Hits FM 92.1 and 91.1. Good morning to you as well, and thank you very much for joining us. And of course, for those of you watching us on the live streams on the different social media platforms that we do every single day, that is on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. Did I say Facebook? Yeah, so as always, that is where we are at. And a special good morning to all of you out there in the UK, the US, and Canada. And, I know that there continues to be more people watching us outside of St. Lucia, but for those of you right here in the country, we know what we're going through, and we're staying abreast with all the issues, and we do that every day. Thank you once again for being with us, and good morning to you. Now, we are going to have a discussion on, normally we do the issues, but I think we need to deal with a person, because this person in particular has a lot of clout and we don't know much about him. But just so we can start it off, let's just take a look.
Democratic Labour Party supporters are desirous of being led by other individuals: Don Valinis 17%, David Estwick 15%, Christopher Sinclair 12%, and then a few others. But certainly the situation in the Barbados Labour Party is one in which the conversation as to who should lead seems to have essentially focused heavily on Ms. Motley, with a smattering of support for other individuals, but certainly the single largest chunk would be Ms. Motley's. Owen Arthur would be the second person. The other thing with the Democratic Labour Party support that is certainly fascinating in this survey is the extent to which the Democratic Labour Party support seems to have moved away from Chris Sinclair as an option. And those of you who follow these polls might recall that in our polling, certainly up to just before the last election, Chris Sinclair presented as an option, in some instances a more popular option than the Prime Minister. That has changed dramatically. We see a situation now where the Prime Minister's leadership numbers have fallen significantly. As I said, his popularity in the party is now down to 49%, and it looks as though the Democratic Labour Party supporters are considering other options, and the name that seems to be appearing most frequently is that of Minister of Business Don Valinis, International Business Minister Don Valinis, and then secondly, Dr. David Estwick, Minister of Agriculture. So those are the numbers for leadership, and I do feel that they will generate considerable interest. There's a history to all of this, which we will probably be able to reflect on in the weeks to come, using some of the historic data that tracks and tells us about leaders. But one of the things that is fairly clear from this data is that as far as sitting prime ministers go, Prime Minister Fernando Stewart clearly has some of the most unflattering numbers of any sitting prime minister that we have ever monitored over time.
Now, this individual, if you do not know, is Peter Wickham, and there he seems to be an independent pollster, and if you couldn't catch it from the accent, he is a Barbadian. He works with numbers and he gives a synopsis of what he thinks, and from data on politics and who's going to win and that sort of thing. So that's what he does, and in there you heard him speak about Fernell Stewart and other politicians. But I think we need to know exactly who this person is, because he is able to change the minds and actions of certain politicians here. And even when he's speaking in Barbados about the Barbadian politics, he was working then for Mia Mottley. And it is important to keep that in mind, because when you're hearing him speak just there, it seemed to be about numbers and what he's getting from the data. But how can you really do that when at the time you're working for Mia Mottley as part of Cambridge Analytica? So we are there. Let's take a look at more of what he's saying and the advice that he's given to our own politicians with regards to COVID and many other things, and the elections, of course. So let's take a look at that.
Coming back to this issue about vaccines, and vaccines now being utilized as a marker as to which point in time you actually are going to roll out general elections. Where did we hear this story from before? Remember that the Prime Minister quite recently went over to Barbados. And over in Barbados, we do know a good gentleman, Mr. Peter Wickham, has in fact done polls and provided advice in the past to the United Workers' Party government. And in fact, quite recently, you may also recall some statements being made by Mr. Wickham, first back last year, when, of course, there was that expectation that there was going to be this sort of a snap election or an early election, so that the government was, you heard these rumors that, okay, well, the government was waiting to see what happened in Jamaica, and whether the government would swing in Jamaica might give them a sense there, and what they were going to wait to see what happened in Trinidad, and maybe if the incumbent keeps on winning, then maybe that might be a sign of what can happen in St. Lucia, and maybe a good word for the incumbent there. And then you're also hearing as well that you're waiting for what to see in St. Vincent. And of course, everybody's waiting and seeing. But yet still, of course, here in St. Lucia, that never materialized. And you have to wonder why. You have to wonder why a government which seems so very, well, in their view, was somehow willing to or able to win 16 seats, somehow is so very, very jaded and shady about calling an election. But let's hear from Mr. Peter Wickham on his views about the chances of the United Workers' Party. And this, of course, I have to point out, was actually since back in the 17th of January. This clip was, this story was covered by Hot 7 TV. Let's listen in.
Did Prime Minister Alan Chastanet lose a golden opportunity to secure an election victory in 2020 like his counterparts in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines? In an interview with Hot 7 TV News back in 2020, Barbados-based political consultant Peter Wickham stated that if he were advising Prime Minister Alan Chastanet, his advice would be to call the election sooner rather than later, as he felt the odds were in his favor. Many had anticipated a snap election in 2020, but that did not happen. Wickham believes a 2021 election will be harder to win for the St. Lucia government, given that whereas it could have mitigated the short-term impact of COVID-19, the long-term impact of the pandemic has set in and is proving harder to address.
I would say that the odds are impacted significantly in terms of COVID. I think it's going to be harder to win an election in this year. However, we have to wait to see what the Prime Minister has up his sleeve, because he may very well have some life-changing projects that could very well be the decider in all of this. My urgency last year had a lot to do with the fact that I felt that within the first few months of the pandemic, we could far more easily respond to the demands that were being made. But now that we are in the long-term region. I don't know that there is an urgency for him to rush to an election now, and I do feel that an election currently at this point in time is highly unwise, and I think it will be difficult to organize anyhow because we are in a second wave.
Wickham predicts a mid-year election. His conclusion is based on the premise that the government will await a rollout of a COVID-19 vaccine on island.
I think that we're looking at mid-year, and I think that we could possibly be looking at the Prime Minister using up some of the additional 3 months period that he has. So that's my sense. So either an election in June, or I would say maybe in July or even August, because he does have 2 months to use up, and I think that the COVID thing gives him an opportunity. My feeling is that he would want to ensure that he has a substantial part of the population immunized before he moves to the next general election, and that would seem to be a reasonable objective.
Wickham argues that based on the voting trends, a second term for the Alan Shastney-led government is not outside the realm of possibility and is still, in fact, very likely.
I still think he has a good chance of retaining power. In the history of St. Lucia, you have generally given 2 terms, unless the first term has been what one could consider disastrous. And I think that if I compare his first term to the first term of his predecessor in UWP, one could argue that the party is in considerably better shape now than could be said in relation to his predecessor some years ago. So I think that he is probably in a good shape to win a second term.
St. Lucia is expecting a COVID vaccine in the first quarter of 2021 through the COVAX facility. It is left to be seen whether the government will indeed go down to the wire and await the rollout of a vaccine before calling an election mid-year, as predicted by Peter Wickham.
Well, that was Peter Wickham back in January. We're now in May. And of course, we're only a few days away from that anniversary of the 50th anniversary of a government. And I've made the point before that on average, a term, an electoral term in St. Lucia has been 4 years and 9 months. Right? That's the average length of any term in St. Lucia. So invariably, elections usually come before the anniversary date of the general election. Of course, in this instance, we are not going to be seeing that. Now, what we appear to be hearing from Mr. Wickham, again, this narrative about the vaccine and the vaccine rollout. And it's the exact same type of narrative that we also were hearing, in fact, in the United Kingdom. And some people were talking about, here's Boris Johnson, an absolute mess of a prime minister with respect to what occurred with the United Kingdom and their own issues with COVID-19 and how it was pretty much badly handled. And yet still, here come the vaccines and the vaccine rollout. And there were suggestions that, in fact, he got a boost in the polls as a result of that. And that, of course, helped him, is helping him, so to speak, and the Conservative Party to, still have some hope whenever a next general election is called. And of course, this idea that vaccines can do so, it's because you're talking about people, and of course, you're speaking about protecting lives. And so people, once they feel that they're vaccinated, you get a sense that they, of course, will feel more confident, that they'll be able to move around, they'll feel safer. And that, of course, is good. You get that feel-good boost. So it's obvious that we want to actually have as many people get vaccinated as possible. But we clearly have not seen the kind of effort required to be able to achieve that and to achieve herd immunity like in some other countries. But what is also very telling at this point in time, and which maybe Mr. Wickham was not even seeing at that time back in January, he's admitted that, of course, it was far easier back in September or back in last year. But why? Because of resources too. And look at what has happened over the past couple of months. The government by October effectively said, the Prime Minister again said, the country is broke. And so therefore what he was saying was that the country does not have any more money to provide income support. the country does not have enough any more money to provide assistance to banana farmers who are owed $8 million to Windfresh. The country simply does not have enough money to be able to provide any kind of additional support required to the public transport sector, which had to go into situations where it was only being allowed a certain number of persons, 9 or 10 persons in a bus. The country does not have enough money to be able to provide every child with a laptop. The country does not have enough money to ensure that parents can still get the kind of support that they require at this time, because the fact is they now have to go out to work. The country certainly does not have enough money to be able to provide support to taxi drivers or vendors, and we certainly don't have any money for farmers. We certainly don't have very much money for fishers, until such time that we said that, oh, we were going to close them down for a week because they were the ones bringing in COVID from Martinique. So that entire situation of trying to have enough resources, right, was a major issue as to why the government was effectively being advised to hold an election early. But they went against that. And you've got to ask yourself, well, why did they go against that? Was it simply that the polls were not in their favor at that time? Or was it that they were still very desirous of possibly raiding the barn? Still very desirous of seeing what could be had, what could be achieved by keeping on and ensuring that you have more projects. And we've heard that statement about, think of the number of projects that you can have. And listen to Mr. Peter Wickham, you know, or Wickham as some people are calling him out there. You know, what else does the Prime Minister have up his sleeve? As if the Prime Minister is some sort of a magician and he can somehow whip out some sort of amazing new and exciting project. And we're going to hear about lots of exciting projects, no doubt. And we're going to be continuing along with projects, whether they're good for the country right about now or not. And of course, again, as always, that $600 million airport, where the Prime Minister comes and says he's never seen as much steel as ever before in his life. But as to whether we can finish the projects, as to whether we can finish this new Castries Grosley Highway upgrade with the roundabouts, where we still don't even know for sure, well, you know, where we're going to be putting, well, we now seem to know where to be putting the roundabouts, but do we even know what junctions we're putting and how those are going to access? I don't even know how. Well, of course, we brought in a new engineering consulting firm, so maybe we do now, but let's see what happens. Oh, okay, we got maybe some extra pipes to put in, so let's go ahead and see if we can squeeze that into. But the likelihood, as well as with St. Jude, is that a lot of that is not going to happen.
So once again, for me and for you, I think it's important that we know the people playing and determining where we are as a country. Peter Wickham did mention that there are life-changing projects that the Prime Minister would have up his sleeve that he wants to implement before he calls the elections. He said also that it would be called maybe around June or July, down to the wire, and the Prime Minister will probably take in the extra 3 months that's been afforded to him. It goes straight down. And what are we seeing now? We are seeing that we are, 16, 17 days within the 6th year of the 5-year Shastri administration. So we are really seeing that happening. And there are several other things that he would mention that we are seeing there as well. So when Peter Wickham will say, what else does the Prime Minister have up his sleeve, and try to come across like, you know, he's unbiased, he's an independent pollster, he's from Barbados. So I mean, what does he really have to do with our elections? I mean, he has no skin in the game, so you would think, but that is not the case. When the Prime Minister went to vacation in Canouan, same Peter Wickham. When you hear the Prime Minister went to Barbados twice in 1 week, and Mia Motley wouldn't even see him because he didn't take on the people COVID protocols, who he went to see? His pollster, not pollster, you would call that an advisor, you'd call that the people holding the strings there, because that is who they're listening to, that is who he's listening to. And I, for one, think that when we have people coming in the country, talking to different media outlets and pretending to be independent, it continues to insult us. I guess that's how Cambridge Analytica works. So you'll pretend to be independent, he doesn't have anything to do with it, but at the same time, you will be on vacation, you will be having your meetings, you are advising the Prime Minister on even when to call elections and what to be doing, but you're going to pretend that you're not in it. And I saw that particularly when he also spoke about the leader of the opposition. So for me and for you, I'm putting you on notice, nebot by utan about Peter Wickham excicadia, wasav koteye, no muna say a flub we got by yo, he wants them to win. So even when you come, you know, with the objectivity and the sound of it, that's not the case. So we heard him speak about, you know, it looks like the Prime Minister will win by what he's saying. He has a good chance of maintaining power, Peter Wickham says. Okay, that's what he's saying about Chastney. You're on vacation with him anyway and doing all your thing. So it's interesting. What does he think about the leader of the opposition, knowing what we know now?
Can Philip J. Pierre lead the opposition St. Lucia Labour Party to an election victory? It is a question that has been keenly debated by many, both outside and within the ranks of the SLP. In some circles, Dr. Ernest Hilaire has been pegged as the next best thing to Dr. Kenny Anthony. The party, for its part, says such a debate is a moot point because there is no leadership question or challenge. Last year, former SLP leader Dr. Kenny Anthony gave Pierre his endorsement, referring to him as a nuts and bolts man. Dr. Ernest Hilaire himself, who has been pegged as the future of the SLP, conceded that Pierre does not possess the dynamism of a Dr. Anthony, but says what he lacks in that department, he makes up for in competence. Barbados-based political analyst Peter Wickham is keeping a close eye on how the St. Lucia election is shaping up. He says some of the expectations of Philip J. Pierre as the SLP leader are clearly unrealistic.
He definitely doesn't have the dynamism that one may want to see, but then again, neither did Prime Minister Chastney at that point in time. You would recall that if you attempt to compare Chastney to leaders like Dr. Anthony, and I would say even Mr. Compton, it's a different style of leadership. And I tend to think that the comparisons that we are making is that people are expecting Jean-Pierre to be Dr. Anthony, and they're expecting him to lead like Dr. Anthony and to have Dr. Anthony's flair. I don't believe it's going to happen, and I think that we have to give leaders the opportunity to be themselves. He certainly doesn't measure, in my eyes, as I would have expected a leader to measure. But, Prime Minister Chastney has grown into the role, so it's entirely possible that he will grow into that role too.
For those who tout Dr. Hilaire's political prowess, Wickham says while he understands the comparisons and arguments, any attempt at a leadership change at this time would be a foolish decision by the SLP.
I don't think the St. Lucia Labour Party is going to change leadership. No, they can't go back to Dr. Anthony. And I think that to move Philip Jean-Pierre at this stage would be highly unwise because I think that they understand that as well. So I think that they're pretty much stuck with him. I realize when you see him as a person and you see Dr. Hilaire, the level of fight appears to be different. Of course, Dr. Hilaire is a younger person, but then he has his own baggage too. I mean, his performance in the last election left much to be desired. He's currently engaged in a battle that speaks to his integrity with the Prime Minister. And I mean, this is also a battle I think that will be a factor. So I don't believe that he is necessarily without any kind of encumbrance or hindrance in terms of going forward.
Philip J. Pierre at the helm of the SLP and Dr. Ernest Hilaire as his first deputy leader certainly make a formidable team by many people's standards, and Labour has consistently touted its standard and quality of candidates. All eyes are on Team Labour to see if the slogan of putting people first strikes a chord with the electorate and leads to a victory at the polls.
So even when you're seeing that as well, you know, news reports, the pollster from Barbados, you know, trying to come across as objective, but that, again, we know it's not true. So I think right now we need to arm ourselves with knowledge So you will see him more, and I think I've seen him on a couple of shows with Timothy, again as the independent pollster, and he knows what he's doing. So he'll say certain things. Whatever he says, there's a reason for saying it. But for us, I think when we hear him, when we see him, we need to know where he's coming from and what he come and do. So Peter Wickham, maybe he did it last time, or I don't know. But for this one here, we will not be fooled by this stance of objectivity that you're trying to come with. We understand what it is. We understand who you're working for. But I think too, with this latest one, you understand the power that he has, because people will say, like, you know, why are we doing a first segment on somebody that doesn't even, he's not even from here, and, you know, it's not a big deal. But I think it is. When you have a prime minister who continues to make some very strange decisions, things that we haven't seen, things that, you know, we've never seen before, that prime minister decides to do, where does it come from? Who is advising him? He doesn't listen to anyone that we know clearly, except Guy, I guess. But then, you know, with Peter Wickham, we have to know the power that he has. So we will look at something else, as in the postponement of the House sittings. Remember that? People have been saying, King, I've heard all the stories about maybe the speaker sick, all of these things. And now, you know, Nicole have to come with her mop and bucket. That's not what he meant, and whatever. So let's listen to what Nicole McDonald has been paid to say.
According to the senior communications officer for the government, Nicole MacDonald, legislation that was to be brought before Parliament on Tuesday, 22nd June, needed more consideration and deliberation. But was the government unaware of the stage of readiness of its proposed legislation before giving the go-ahead to the Clerk of Parliament to put out a statement advising of a sitting on Monday, only to put out another release later that Monday to advise of a postponement? MacDonald says the issue was unavoidable. Government is acting out of an abundance of caution.
I mean, these things do happen, Lovely, in the course of conversation, in the course of when you look at what's coming up on the agenda. So, I mean, in terms of the time, I understand your question. However, I don't think it's a major issue. I think the major issue here is that we want to make sure that when we come before Parliament with certain things, that it is in the right form, that all stakeholders and partners are in sufficient agreement. Cabinet met on Monday, and it was the various matters that were down to go before Parliament were discussed, and it was decided that there were certain matters on the agenda that needed further clarification, that needed further discussion, especially with regard to the stakeholders involved. If you notice, a lot of the bills that were down have to do with taxation matters, have to do with our ongoing discussions with partners such as the OECD. There was some clarification that was being sought with regard to a lot of those bills.
Rumors abound that all is not right in the camp of the current government, and talk of dissension by a senior member of cabinet persists. MacDonald rubbishes such claims as propaganda fueled by the opposition and its surrogates.
We do understand that there are a lot of rumors circulating as to Parliament being postponed, and I just want to right away state that a lot of those things are untrue and should not be repeated. For about the past 4 years, we've been battling this fake news era, where in fact persons just say whatever and it's allowed to circulate, especially on social media.
MacDonald could not confirm whether the next sitting of Parliament will be held next Tuesday, the 29th of June, or what bills would be brought before Parliament if it did convene. She says one thing is certain, the government will keep citizens updated.
So Nicole, they're coming with that, whatever that was, not really an explanation. She doesn't, that happens, and that's the same administration, we remember, that pushed down our throats that COVID bill. Remember that? They wait for nothing. They tried to get Jacinta. You think people really care about due process? You really think that? So now that there have been several cancellations, postponements, we don't know whether there's going to be one next week. The question remains, why do that? Why at the last hour, Tuesday the sitting have to happen, Monday you cancel? What could have possibly happened? And this is where Peter Wickham once again will show his power. Peter Wickham is the answer to that question. Why did the House sitting stop? Why did that happen? Peter Wickham, in his wisdom, told Shastny and a lot of them that if you're going to be borrowing 40 million EC dollars within your 6th year in an administration, 6th year, at that late an hour, he said, that's a quote, he would be turning a machine gun on himself, that the people would not forgive him, that he would lose elections, it wouldn't make any sense. So Peter Wickham tells the Prime Minister that, and that is cancelled, because we know that all the Prime Minister cares about is winning. So if somebody that he thinks has the knowledge and whatever, and they tell him Cambridge Analytica D, who professor, ipakaife, papis, papis papis papis, it's plea, just more borrowing, not that. It's because Peter Wickham and Cambridge Analytica believe that if he does it, that he would lose. So at the last minute, he listens and does just that. So when we talk about whether this administration cares at all about people, or they even have a conscience about what they're doing, all of these things have been said. I saw it posted, you have called and said, why would the Prime Minister do that? I don't think it's wise. All of the other right-thinking people that would say that, you don't listen. But Peter Wickham will say that you are turning a machine gun on yourself if you do that. And St. Lucia, that is why I think, I've said this before, that knowing the real enemy, knowing that the enemy of this country and the enemy of this state and the enemy to us and the people that need and the people that continue to need income assistance and all of the other things that we're seeing that this administration, they do not care about. It's not a priority, and all they care about is winning. It's not fair, but I think, like I said, we are arming, if the Prime Minister put the machine gun on himself, we are arming ourselves with knowledge. So Peter Wickham, I expect you to say more things. I expect you to be on the talk shows purporting yourself to be some independent pollster. Look, I SPO, but we can see you for what you are. We will be right back.
I can't stay.
Protocols for international visitors while in St. Lucia. The following protocols are established to guide the stay of all guests while on island in order to mitigate any possible spread of infection. During the first 14 days, visitors are allowed to patronize approved beaches, restaurant, sea and land excursions, and sites and attractions. All visits are scheduled and pre-arranged by their respective accommodation providers. During this period, all visitors will be transported to and from the certified sites using only COVID-19 certified tourism transportation. After the first 14 days, if any visitor wishes to stay on island beyond the 14-day period, they must apply for and receive a health clearance certificate from the Ministry of Health. Visitors will be allowed to travel, be out in the wider public and patronize local businesses unsupervised once health clearance certificates have been received. During their entire stay, visitors must wear their masks whenever they are in public places and maintain the mandatory 6 feet distancing from others.
We can win this war. Get vaccinated. We're taking our life back. Get vaccinated.
My health and strength is my profession. It is the top priority to me and my family. By taking the COVID-19 vaccine, I can protect those who are vulnerable in my family and also my clients. To all the health-conscious persons and the athletes, I would like to say, COVID-19 has no friends, and we healthy persons can be affected as well. And worse yet, we can pass it on to those amongst us who are vulnerable. I'm looking forward to having a full class again and not having to choose which clients can come to work out today and tomorrow. I'm looking forward to our fitness family getting back together.
Get vaccinated.
This message is brought to you by the Bureau of Health Education of the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
This is UTV.
Been observing the construction of the roadworks in the Rodney Bay area along the main highway over the last few months, I guess like most other people who live in the north. And I put together a few comments under 4 subsections. The first one relates to the objective of the project. The second relates to the conceptualization of it. The third to the planning and execution. And the fourth to alternative concepts. So the objective of the project was originally to improve the functioning of the main Rodney Bay intersection. To facilitate that, the limit of works only needed to be a total of about, I would say, 800 meters of road reconstruction or upgrading. You would have extended it, 370 odd meters on either side, heading to Castries and then heading to Grosilley. At this point, it extends all the way, up to the Key Largo intersection. That section of road, really serves no purpose to enhance the functioning of the Rodney Bay intersection itself. An additional objective could have been to improve traffic flow into Castries, but with the current project, all that will result is transferring that bottleneck to either the Montgiro-Morshy intersection or a bit further down to the Computer World intersection. But there will be no improvement, there will be no reduced travel times in the mornings, during rush hour to get into Castries. So having these 2 roundabouts at Old Military Road and at the Key Largo intersection, it is not going to improve the travel times during rush hour. The second thing is the conceptualization of it. There are a lot of things that were overlooked. Originally, when the construction of the project had started, the first roundabout was being set out at the Old Military Road intersection, and the second roundabout was being set out at the Rodney Heights intersection. And I remember there being a lot of talk about how close the 2 roundabouts were and the safety hazards associated with having 2 roundabouts so closely spaced. I think the first person to really voice that was Calix George Jr. And everything he said was spot on. It's only after that that program had aired that I noticed, efforts were being made a couple months later to set up this second roundabout at the Key Largo intersection. The third thing is the planning and execution, which in my opinion, I think wasn't well done. Primarily because the design was incomplete, as I mentioned before, and because of that, a lot of mistakes have been made. For one, you can see the section of sidewalk outside the Railway Park as you approach the Volney gas station coming from the north. You can see that there's a section of sidewalk there that the levels are completely incoherent. They don't follow. So they're gonna have to basically use a lot of makeup concrete to end up having a section of sidewalk that's about 700 mils thick. You only use those sorts of concrete cross sections to to build, bridges, or I mean, with a 700 mil thick slab can probably span as much as 50 feet. So for a sidewalk, it's a real overkill, and I just see a lot of things like that happening along length of the road. I mean, too many to mention every single one, but the main consequence of that is very poor planning and rushing the construction, not taking time to really think through exactly how they're gonna execute the project. There are other things that have been overlooked as well. When the length of road to be reconstructed has been increased by so much, it's going to be necessary to implement or to construct a series of pedestrian overpasses. Originally, when we had done the proposal I had mentioned to you, we only had one pedestrian overpass because the limit of works was very small. It was less than 800 meters, as I mentioned. So there was a pedestrian overpass going from around the Railway Park, Rodney Heights development to a bus stop just in front of the Providence building, or JQ Plaza. But now, I mean, because it extends so far, you're going to probably have to have a series of pedestrian crossings or pedestrian underpasses or overpasses or something that will disrupt the traffic flow even further and kind of defeat the purpose of it. Is also going to bump up the budget even higher than it already is. The fourth point is really related to some more viable concepts, which I think would have made a lot more sense. The obvious option that I think a 5-year will come up with, and it will work, is an asymmetric roundabout at the main intersection. I mean, that would have resolved the problem of improving the traffic flow across the intersection. That is what the Ministry of Infrastructure had initially asked for from bidders on that project, but I don't know. We never got a response to our submission, so I don't know. The second alternative I would have suggested is something like an overpass. The overpass would have very limited land acquisition requirements, and it would be a much longer term solution than a roundabout. The overpass could also have been incorporated into a longer term plan for that section of roadway. Just like some years ago, I remember the Bonte Bridge was replaced, and 4 lanes were incorporated into that as part of a more long-term plan. I mean, the same approach could have been used for this project, and an overpass constructed so that it would probably be there for the next 50 years, beyond us. And the third option is a signalized intersection where the drain that runs along the perimeter of the Railway Park, that could have simply have been, boxed and slabbed, and a turning lane introduced so that motorists coming from Grosley and other areas north of the main Rodney Bay intersection could line up and wait for traffic light to indicate to them to turn right into Rodney Bay, while the traffic on the left of them, would just be, free flowing into Castries. In my opinion, I think the worst thing about the concept currently being constructed is that for motorists who want to go into Rodney Bay, who are coming from the north, so like Grosley, Bonte, etc., you're going to have to drive all the way down to Old Military Road and turn around there and then come back up to go into Rodney Bay. And when you're coming out of Rodney Bay, if you want to go to town, you're going to have to drive all the way up to Kilago, Larry Tretch Road, and then turn around and come all the way back down. I mean, that was completely unnecessary. If any one of the other 3 alternatives were used, you'd have been able to reduce travel times, vehicle operating costs, etc. Road maintenance costs over a long time. There was no detailed study done for this thing. it was just a rushed, unplanned, poorly executed project. And, it's very easy for people to see that now.
And as I always say, and I said that yesterday, there has to be some importance on actual professionals and their analysis, their assessment of the works being done with our money and, what we're seeing there. So in that clip, we understand that the road is, I think it's something that, you can see almost as a driver, like, why the sidewalk that level on the next side high like that? I didn't get that. And even now, we know that part of the sidewalk is falling by radeway and all of the other things that we're seeing. So rushed and unplanned work is what we're seeing in Rodney Bay. And more than that, there continues to be the payments and the investment and the interest being paid to certain people. It's not just the work, it's the money and who is it going to and why is it going to this person. Even the way that, the company was chosen and what they have to pay and what they're going to be paid, all that too is confusing. No, not just confusing, but you see a conflict of interest in so many of the other things. So we're going to take a look at that as well.
Tendering process also came in for review. Ministry officials say contractors were required to come to the table with $15 million up front, and that Fresh Start was the only one who met the criteria. And after reviewing its track record, the ministry gave the contractor the nod. The overall value of the contract stands at $15 million.
Folks, can you all believe this? The contractor had to come up with the $15 million that represents the total contractual sum. I mean, a contract is worth $15 million, inclusive of profit, inclusive of a cost for equipment, for the hiring of equipment, which you already have. You are telling me Charles said, oh, he asked me to show the contract for the 15 million, but I played it, Charles. You are asking me to come up with the $15 million, which is the contractual sum. I mean, no. Honest to God, what is going on in this place? What is going on in this place? Stevenson King, the contract is under your ministry, Although I know Guy don't want to see you. He don't want to see you at all. I can tell you that, and you know that. You asked Fresh Start to come up with $15 million. Just the other day, Timothy Mangala to lend or to give Fresh Start credit up to $5 million to do the $18 million road. Today they can come up with $15 million in cash. Okay. But Guy, what can Fresh Start come up with to do that thing there that C.O. Williams or Renault cannot come up with?
And that is a good question. And when you start to think of what is being said there, so the contractor, they have to come up with $15 million, and that includes the profit and everything else, which again, we have to ask ourselves the question, why are these things being done? It doesn't make any sense. And you know what? Slapan vole. If it doesn't make sense, you can see it right there. And it's not just that. I think too, even with the interest payments and how it's already being made when it shouldn't be made just yet. So when it's design, finance and build, you get your reimbursement, you get payment only after it is completed. But already we're seeing certain people getting paid for work that has not even started yet. Let's take a look.
Fresh Start is supposed to design, to finance and to build those projects using their money. Okay, they use their own money. The terms are that after the project is finished, I need you all to listen, After the project is finished, certified, they have spent their money, we now owe them. When that indebtedness is created, and the indebtedness can only be created legally when the project is completed, certified and completed and certified. So after that is done, there is a 12-month moratorium. So during that year, the government of St. Lucia would have already created the indebtedness to Fresh Start. We don't pay them, but we pay them quarterly interest sums on the $50 million, which will only be due upon completion and certification. You're with me? Good. The balance of the monies, well, the interest is paid, and after 1 year, we start paying them in the same 3-month period, quarterly, principal and interest for that quarter. Now, folks, none of those arrangements are calculated on our debt, although it is a burden, a financial burden carried by the state. It is a financial burden carried by the state. But let me just show you an internal memo of the contractual terms of Fresh Start project. Could you put up that first memo for me, please? Good. Department of Finance, from Director to PS. Date 17th June 2020. 4 years after they have been in office. Over 4 years. National Road Rehabilitation Project, Fresh Start. The Department of Finance is pleased to inform you that approval has been granted under the following terms and conditions with respect to the National Roads Rehabilitation Program using a design, build, finance, transfer loan facility. The project, by the way, folks, leave that up. By the way, let me just inform you, information coming to hand. Julius, Tiger has not paid Julius. Julius is taking Tiger to court for the road that was given to Tiger in Dennery as a result of a direct contract. He could not do it. He contracted Julius. Julius was work. He can't get paid. That's under the show. But Julius, if you're listening, I would want you to call the show for me when I open the lines, please. Okay. The project includes the provision for culverts, bridges and road crossings as part of the terms. Terms of facility. Project limit, 50 million. Facility, design, build, finance. Repayment term, 4 years plus 12 months moratorium with an interest rate at 5.25%. Now, moratorium on principal, 12 months from date of commencement of work. Good. So, folks, this is a schedule of payments. Okay, you can take it down. Which shows that we are paying them after completion. There is a 12-month moratorium on principal payment. So for the following year after completion, all we pay them is interest on the money to which they are now entitled. And after that year, we begin paying them interest with principal. Okay? Now there is a schedule of payments, which I will show you. It shows the quarterly payments. So for 4 years, quarterly, there are 4 quarters in a year, so there would be 16 payments for 4 years. But for the first year, there's a total period, you could say, of 5 years of payment. The first year, interest alone. The next 4 years is interest and principal. Could you put up the schedule for me, please? They will. Okay, right. You will notice here the schedule of payments to Fresh Start. Each payment represents a quarterly payment, folks. It represents a 3-month payment, so any 4 payments together would be for 1 year. Beginning by moratorium, the interest, as you can see here, for every 3 months is $656,250. All right, 620 $56,250. And that will kick in after completion of the works are certified and after we in fact owe Fresh Start $50 million. So let us say that is money they have in the bank and they're entitled to interest. They will get interest because we owe them. Now folks, that amounts to about $218,750 a month in interest. Zodbietan, $218,750 a month. You can take that down. Folks, that interest payment becomes due only when, one, the works are completed, two, the work has been built to specification or to standards, three, Fresh Start have spent all their money on the projects, so then they are now entitled, and fourthly, our engineers have certified the work. So work is certified, payment is due, interest kicks in. But this is corruption at its highest level. Only 2 quarters have elapsed since they signed the contract. Yo poko même commencé, juge ouais fini. Nou ha ka paye yo le terrain, en lè la ha nou poko dwe yo. You know? When will it stop? When? So it is correct to say that based on those 2 payments that we have paid Fresh Start, once the ink had dried on the contract, we started paying interest. Because we have paid for the only 2 quarters that have passed since the signing of the contract, when they have not spent a penny yet. Folks, like I said, this is institutionalized corruption, aided and abetted by the political directorate. You know? So it is safe to say, like I said, we are paying interest from the day the contract was signed. Now, let me first show you the 2 payments. As I indicated, they signed in June. You saw the thing. July, August, September is one quarter. October, November, December is another one. A third is not up yet. But the 2 quarters that have passed or elapsed, you are in interest of $1.3 million. Show them the first treasury thing for me, please. Good. Vendor name, Marigo Buildings. What happened? Fresh Start made the payments, directed that the payments be made to Marigo Buildings Depot Limited. The contract is in Fresh Start, but Marigo Buildings Depot Limited is the one receiving the dough. $656,000. The date here is, where's the date? Clearance date, 22nd February. 22nd of February 2021. $656,000. Give me the second one. 22nd of February. The other one, 3rd of March. 3rd of March. Another one, 22nd of February, 6, and what? How long later? 5 days. 5 days later, another one for $656,000 again. Those are 2 invoices for representing interest payments for Fresh Start. And folks, the two of them are a mere, 5 and 8 days, 8 or 9 days apart. 8 or 9 days apart, $1.3 million in interest. You could take it down. Folks, is that right? Is it right? In a time when the government is saying they cannot even pay COVID wardens. COVID wardens had to work for 2 months before being paid. When the Prime Minister says the country is broke, it is not broke. The resources are ill-directed. We are in a mess. Poor people can't get reprieve. They cannot get assistance. They can't. You know, several wardens have indicated to me, boss, up to the end of February, they're not bothering me again, so they seem to have been paid. But corruption thrives in this country. Oh yes, it does. So, you know, as curiosity would have it, I went and do my research on who is Marigo Depot Buildings Limited. I went to do that. I want to know what's going on. I saw the registration, put it up, of Marigo. Marigo Buildings Depot Limited, company number C493 of 2007. I wanted to know who the shareholders of Marigo, and that y'all could say what y'all want. What everything I showed there, genuine documents, facts. Those are facts. Good. Show them who the shareholders are for me. Please scroll up. Scroll up, scroll up. Yes. List of persons with shares. Good. The only shareholder, if you look to the bottom left of your screen, is no other than Timothy Mangal. The only shareholder is Timothy Mangal. Scroll up again. Let's see who the directors of the company are. Let's see who the directors of the company are. And we go to the directors of the company. The company has only one director, Timothy Mangal. Timothy Mangal. I didn't make it up. I didn't make it up. And I leave the rest to you guys. Sign a contract in June. From June to now, only 2 quarters have safely elapsed. We have already paid interest on $50 million for those 2 quarters. So we paid interest on $50 million to which Fresh Start is not entitled. And Fresh Start directed that the monies be paid to Marigo Buildings, Timothy Mangal.
For something, nothing for nothing, something for something, nothing for nothing, something for something, nothing for nothing. Corruption, corruption, corruption in the society. Corruption, corruption. Corruption in the society. Corruption, corruption. Corruption in the society. Corruption, corruption. Corruption
in all of what we've heard there, I think it really was an effective breakdown of what we're seeing. So $1.2 million, that's as to when that clip was aired, already being given to Timothy Mangal, because Fresh Start say to pay them instead for works that they haven't completed, that they haven't done yet, but the interest payments are being given to Timothy Mangal for work that has not been done, and in a time when it shouldn't even be, because you should not be paid until the work is completed. So they're finding a way for Timothy Mangal for the monies to be redirected to him. Now, when we see all of that, it's a 15-minute clip. It breaks it down perfectly, I think, for you to understand that there is corruption. We know that. But to see how people can detail it, to see how certain people get money. Now, Timothy Mangal, earlier this week, will speak. After knowing all what we know, after hearing what we say there, what Richard has said there, and all the documents, Timothy Mangal, on Monday, speak about roadworks and say this.
Get that money to replace it. Yes. But you know what? They're building half a mile of road in Grosile for $20 million. You know, so you could take that $20 million and you could put it into that program instead.
So that is his $20 million.
You understand? That's to show you how lost the guy is. How lost he is. Clueless. Yes. He's clueless. I mean, and then he going out to say after that the rest, some of the roads that they are building, they can take all of those monies and pay to the people of St. Lucia as COVID relief funds.
Wow.
And then he said, but you know what? Some of the roads, they're doing it with monies that they're borrowing from other contractors, and they'll pay after. After he said all of that, then he comes back towards the end and contradict himself. Yeah. Okay? I mean, you cannot on your own even identify a source of revenue for you to be able to replace those monies you're going to give in taxes. Exactly. But then you're going to go and talk about a road and say, oh, they can spend $20 million in that road. Philip J. Pierre doesn't know that the government of St. Lucia has not paid a cent. Is not spending a penny on that road. Yes. These are contractors, and I must say, and of course I must say again, bravo to the government of St. Lucia on its confidence in local contractors. All right, that road up there is a local contractor building that road on a design finance bill with his own money. Yeah. So what you trying to tell me? That this contractor, instead of building a road for the government of St. Lucia, will take $20 million and give it to Philip J. Pierre as budget support because he has a shortfall in revenue, okay, because he gave $48,000 a month in tax-free and he has a shortfall in revenue, or a contractor, okay, like the others, okay. I mean, we have 4 local contractors that are doing the very same thing. Reno Kajada, okay, Nationwide, Fresh Start, and I think to some extent Kajada, Skelly and so on. Mega contracting. Any of those contractors, they are in business to make money. So if they have $20 million or $10 million, they will look to invest it in order to make a profit. Now the government of St. Lucia is smart enough to say, okay, all right, I do not have the money now, but I have created a revenue stream with the fuel and so on. I can pay you in 5 years or in 10 years time. But you have the money invested in the road network. Which of those contractors will take $10 million champagne and just give it to government and say, go and give it to Jack and Jones and so on? It just tells you that those guys are clueless. So if you're going to say that, if you're going to say, dotish, if you're going to say, if you're going to say, if you're going to say that you're going to find income support for these people, then come on the media and say where you're getting the income support. So not from contractors.
You're saying Philip Pierre is expecting to go to a contractor and say, give me $10 million.
Well, he didn't say so.
On what he said.
But then based on what he said, he's saying that instead of financing roads, you should take those monies to go and give income support and so on to the people. But who are financing those roads?
I saw that and I really wondered, what is the point? Almost, what is the point of even coming up with the facts if somebody can lie with such conviction when we know that you are making $600,000 on interest with this project? $600,000 every 3 months that you are making, and you are saying to people, why are you talking about income assistance for people, and you're saying roads not making sense and all that sort of thing. I think Timothy Mangal is the lowest of the low. It's incredible how somebody can lie like that. And more than that, he talks about Philip J. Pierre, but I think it's an insult to all of the other small contractors that have yet to be, they can't be paid yet, but you can get paid on interest for work that has not been completed, not even started yet, but you're getting paid already. And for the money that you're talking about, people talk about income assistance and trying to help people. We don't have an x-ray machine in our hospital. Children can't get laptops yet, and you're boasting about e-books. You understand? You'll threaten public service workers to take half of their pay. You can't give the farmers $1,500 piece. You can't malmenela. They don't know how to deal with money. All of these things, but you can get $600,000 every 3 months, and that's okay. And you will lie on your station next to Guy Joseph Eglotson and continue to say these things when there's evidence, the facts are there that you are getting money when others are not, when people are dying that you get in, but y'all don't care. So when people start to talk about roads and the construction of it and other things have to happen, people are not being prioritized. Another set of $40 million is about to be borrowed on Tuesday there for your COVID emergency again. And people not getting, and Timothy Mangal will be there with a smirk on his face and say that. I don't know how that can happen, and I don't even understand, you know, if you have to do the show every day and you have to come back and, you know, demati somebody and you need so much energy to do that. But for me, I thought it would be best for us to remember what is happening and see that no matter how much these people come out there with their fake outrage and everything else, they are corrupt. Timothy Mangal, you are corrupt. Eglas volela setlici. I had taken calls today. I don't think we have the time, so I apologize for that. But you know, in all of what we're seeing, and we're just talking about small contractors, people that are hustling to make something of themselves that can't even get paid. The treasury itself, the lines are long going out of the building and around it, you know, so long. But then you have Timothy Mangal already doing all what he's doing, still getting the priority, still making money. Guy and all the rest of them will tell them sacrifice. The public service workers have to sacrifice for them to take a 50% cut. I don't understand. But you know what? As we come to the end of the show, let's put up the next image there. I'm starting to lose my voice now. These are just a few people, just some people, small contractors who have yet to be paid by this administration. That's Lincoln Casimir, Vanessa Huggins, Maria Boysville, Cooperis Charles, Shanna Charles, Donnelly Benter, John James, George Wennett, Nigel Jules, Mason Vincent, Curtis Evans, Kendall Adonis. These are just a few of the people. So when you're giving on interest, no, keep it up. Keep up the image there so we could see that of some of the people except Junior Goodrich. But all of these people are just some of the people still owed money that they can't get. But Timothy Mangal will take and continue to take for work that has not been completed. Taking money that's supposed to go to Fresh Start. May Fresh Start Kadi no, give it to Timothy Mangal, and Timothy Mangal will come and lie to us in the country and tell us, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. Meanwhile, we don't have an X-ray at St. Jude's, we don't have anything, we don't know what we're doing about education and so many other things. And you know what? Today, I can't do it today. We need a change, and I am tired of the corruption. I want meritocracy to matter. I want real businessmen that want to take risk and they have some sort of skin in the game and they want to see St. Lucia prosper, actually prosper. I want better. And Timothy Mangal, you and all of you, and Guy and all of you, we can't take it again. We can't survive another 5 years with that. That's the show. I hope to see you tomorrow. God willing, we'll discuss everything else as we always do and try to do with honesty. I will, more deeply, tomorrow.
I can't stay.